Okay, I got one.
What is it?
Is it a Mandalore plot or more of just a Mandalore trick?
Hello and welcome, Star Wars fans, to this week's episode of Duel of the Ranks, a show where debate takes so hot that they'd melt a planet with twin suns. By the end of this episode, we're going to have a definitive answer on where the pieces of the content we're going to talk about, Star Wars The Clone Wars Season 2, Episodes 11, 12, and 13, where they rank amongst the rest. With that, I'm your host, Brody. I'm joined by my co-host, Brian. Today, we're going to talk some more Star Wars. Let's do it. Let's do this thing. Brian, how you doing?
Let's jump in. I'm doing great. How about you today, Brody?
I'm doing pretty good. I watched the content. It was good content. I like Mandalorian stuff. Did you write a synopsis today? I didn't write a synopsis.
I didn't write one, but I can just figure it out as I go along. How about that?
You always do. What happened?
Well, usually I plagiarize, but this time I will do it from my own brain.
Oh, we're doomed.
We finally get to Mandalore, what we've all been waiting for, what everyone remembers about this show. In Season 2, Episode 12, start off with the Mandalore plot, in which Obi-Wan shows up to Mandalore and hangs out with his old homie Satine, who is a new character to this show, very important one. He's also met by Prime Minister Almec, and there's a lot of finger pointing going on, claiming that there's violence on Mandalore, that there's terrorist groups, there's all kinds of things going on. Apparently some prisoner took their own life, which is pretty dark for Clone Wars.
Yeah.
But when Obi-Wan shows up to Mandalore, more stuff gets blown up. A dude jumps off a building, and that was pretty dark. This is not going as well as I thought. Maybe I could just...
I'm enjoying it. Keep going.
Maybe I could just skip through the episode and I'll just give you a play-by-play. That's what we'll do.
There you go.
Yeah, so they show up on Mandalore. Dude jumps off a building to escape being questioned. Everyone's like, no, these guys did it. And some of these people on Mandalore are like, no, we're peaceful now. We can't have fighting going on. We're not going to have terrorists. We're going to keep this all on the hush-hush. So Obi-Wan shows up to really get down to it. He meets, what's his name, Pre Vizsla, who's a pretty important governor. And he's like, oh, I don't know what's going on. We'll help you out. But it turns out Obi-Wan gets kidnapped by Death Watch. And they're like, whoa, we don't want no Jedis snooping around here, trying to figure out what our weapons are up to. And he almost gets crushed in this big crusher thingy. And Satine shows up and saves the day. But then the governor comes in. He's like, oh, hey, I was the bad guy the whole time. So he takes off his helmet. And Obi-Wan fights him a bit, and he ends up saving Satine and getting out of there. So, I don't know. Not a whole lot happened. It's just a lot of kind of who's the bad guys. And then, the guy with his helmet comes off. He's the bad guy, but he's got the super cool Darksaber. And he tries to fight Obi-Wan with all his cool Mandalorian gear. And gets his butt kicked and taps out pretty fast, actually. This episode does not paint Pre Vizsla in as cool of a light as he unfortunately deserves. But then Anakin comes back and Obi-Wan's like, oh, I'm so glad to see you because all these locals in their peaceful ways are not my vibe, which is funny to hear coming from Obi-Wan because he's a pretty peace-loving dude, but even Satine was a little too much for him. Was that a pretty good description of the first episodes? And
that was a pretty good description. I think that was like, I really enjoyed that. What happened in the second episode?
What happened in the second episode? That's the one where they're all on the cruise ship, Voyage of Temptation. This one is basically like Murder on the Orient Express, but with Star Wars. But it's also, I don't know, I think by far one of my favorite episodes of the Clone Wars so far, in that it says some, I don't know, gives a lot of great, interesting depth to some of these characters that you don't really see. So at the beginning of the episode, it's Anakin and Obi-Wan, and they're escorting Satine. Is it to Coruscant? I'm hazy on the details.
I think so, yeah.
Got to get her there safely. There's a bunch of other rich people up on board, but they discover a droid that kills a couple of clone troopers. Little assassin droids are roaming around the ship. So what they do is they catch one, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna get you. So they take it around the table with all the rich people, and it starts going after one of the bad guys. And they're like, oh, it must be those dudes. And it turns out they are in league with the separatists. So they kill a bunch of droids. Boom, boom, boom. Clone Wars action. My browser's having an issue with loading. Disney Plus is kind of struggling when you try to jump around too much. But basically, Pre Vizsla is up to no good. I'm struggling here, Brody. Can you help me out? It's
so like
completely frozen.
What ends up happening ultimately, all that really happens is that we learn Obi-Wan and Duchess Satine were a thing. And afterwards, there's a guy. They're at like a dinner party, and what's his face? The big, overweight, morbidly obese French dude with the Twi'lek hair, Montreal things. Yeah, so he like apparently can eat way too much, but he's like also terribly afraid of spiders, so that's a thing. And then after that happens, Obi-Wan puts a spider in his face, and like the big, overweight blue guy pisses himself because can't handle that. So that was one big thing, one very important note. But then we find out at that dinner party, well, we found the murderer in the building. It was her butler. If that's what his
Pretty
was.
much.
So when we find out it's the butler, he's got that typical, you can never kill me because she is a pacifist and you're a Jedi, but you want to blink her again someday. So you'll never capture me. But he didn't hear behind him like a complete noob. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, bum, bum. And if you would have, you should have known you was going to get jacked by a lightsaber straight through the chest. You know what's funny is it was kind of like an epic Anakin moment, and you were just like rooting for him to be a cold, like, who will mark themselves as a cold-blooded killer? Anakin just wrecks him. And I'm just like, you know what? Everyone's in the crowd like, yeah! Get him!
That's how your crowd reacted?
That's how our crowd reacted. But yeah, and then Anakin's just like, he had this like G. Willikers attitude that completely killed the mood. He was like, what? He was going to blow up the whole plane. Like,
it's true.
This is pod racing. And then you're just like, all right, whatever. Like, just, you're like, you're way too, and that was the whole point, right? To make him look calloused and cold and like how he didn't care about killing someone, whatever. So, that's fine. Then there was the next episode. Okay. The next episode was all about really just politics. Duchess Satine goes to Coruscant because apparently the Republic can just decide to occupy planets even if their leaders determine they don't want them there because, hey, like, I don't know. Sounds...
They have resources.
Because they have resources. They have oil on Mandalore. And so they just went in and decided, well, we're going to occupy it. But ultimately, the people didn't want them there. But they didn't know that because there was a hollow thing, not a holocron, an image of a person who looked like they were requesting help and that the people had lost faith in Duchess Satine. But turns out it was deep faked. So they got the real footage later, but Duchess Satine was framed for murdering the guy that got her that information. So what did they do? Well, I don't actually know how she got out of trouble for that because they thought it was her killing him. So
yeah,
I don't really...
Well, they try to blow up her speeder at the beginning and she survives. She kind of goes on the run for a little bit. I liked all that stuff, like going through the Coruscant underground and Obi-Wan's got to come find her. And
yeah, and so anyway, that was kind of, so she's fine, and then the Republic, like Palpy is over here just pissed because he's not going to be able to go to like that planet now and get the oil from them. So instead, now they just got to sit in Coruscant and wait for the next thing. And now there's Pre Vizsla who's just sitting up throwing a tantrum, like, I'm going to invade them anyway. And I'm just like, Count Dooku's just like,
you can't go. I have other ways of bringing them out.
and whatever. And so now we're waiting to see what comes next. But yeah, I don't know. Ultimately, I really enjoyed it. I
It sets up a
thought,
lot.
yeah, season 2 release has, like, as we said, it steps up its game drastically from season 1. I mean, it's so good. Even KG has watched episodes and has like semi enjoyed herself. Like, that's, if you don't know who that KG is that I'm referring to, well, then you should join the live sessions because it's a whole lot of fun. But most of our listeners don't, and we're very thankful that you listen. But at the same time, the live sessions are a lot of fun. You should check them out. But all of you in Germany, you know who you are. We understand. 7 o'clock Central U.S. time might be kind of early for you, but hey, yeah, just show up anyway. But if you don't, Brian, for all the on-demand listeners, give us the raw thoughts.
The
How you
raw
really feeling?
thoughts.
How you really
I was surprised at how I don't know. They're not that boring. I was expecting a lot more from
What?
rewatching these episodes. I don't know. I think I just remember more of like the later Clone Wars episodes, and it's kind of blurring my judgment about
enjoyable for
anything
you?
Mandalore. I loved them. No, I don't know about love. I liked them a lot. Especially the second one when Obi-Wan gives the most important line in the entire show. If you had said the word, I would have left the Jedi Order for you. I think that's the most important line of dialogue in the entirety of the Clone Wars. And I think these episodes do a lot to establish like the culture of Mandalore and the varying factions, and kind of showing where they are at this time in the galaxy, which is like they're just trying to chill and do their own thing. And this war is just bringing everybody in that doesn't want to be involved, like you said. So I think it does add a lot of context to the Clone Wars itself, and it sets up a lot of really cool stuff that happens later in the series and then later in the rest of the continuity, how it ties into the greater Star Wars picture.
I just feel like this is a great example of why Obi-Wan is not a man's man. Right? He's your typical old Jim Halpert, just waiting for if you had said the word. It's like, no, man, make your move. Take your shot. Don't be that guy that doesn't take the jump shot, then looks at the coach didn't tell me to shoot. Like, no, man, you gotta just shoot your shot every now and again. Don't blame her that you didn't find peace, love, and happiness.
I don't know. When you're a Jedi, you only get one shot at that life, apparently, your entire existence. And it's sad to see that Obi-Wan didn't take it. Of course, we all wanted to see him be happy and find, the person of his dreams and to settle down. But he also wouldn't have been. I do. That's maybe because I don't know. I see a little bit of myself in Obi-Wan, or at least maybe I want to see a little bit of myself with Obi-Wan. I don't know. I just want to do I just feel bad for him devoting his whole life to this cult that is not done anything.
Care about him?
No, it just uses him and just eventually dies anyways. So it's that's
so yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying if he had left the Order and been with her, he probably could have saved her from Maul, depending on when he, I mean, if you could take out Maul as a Padawan, probably could have taken Maul out way later too. I mean, he beats him twice for Pete's sake, 2 for 2. You got to imagine if he was around, regardless of when he leaves the Order, he's probably going to be able to still defend Satine.
Well, he does beat him twice, but you also go to acknowledge he does lose to him at least twice that I can remember, so I don't know where the count really is. Well, the first time Maul and Savage attack him, they kind of corner him on their ship. It's a little unfair, granted.
Yeah,
they beat the crap out of Obi-Wan, and Savage has to come save him. And then later on, I think it's Florum, the planet with the pirates. He and Adi Gallia? I think Adi Gallia fight Maul and
what
Savage.
A fun name to say.
Oh yeah, it was a fun name to say until she died.
We can't say anymore.
She shall not be named.
Yeah, they're both. Yeah, and Obi-Wan had to run away, scamper away like Grievous, like a coward, run away from Maul, pick a fight, and then just.
Man, I tell you, that guy is the most annoying character in all of Star Wars. He should have been dead. Honestly, though, that's kind of I think what gets me excited when I see all this stuff on Mandalore. I know Maul's coming, And he's by far the best character in the Clone Wars.
You think so?
Come on now. Who else is number one?
Best character in the Clone Wars?
The father?
I think, I mean, it's pretty easy for me to say Anakin or Ahsoka.
What?
I mean, the whole thing is kind of like most of the legwork that this show does is making Anakin seem less like a baby, you know, helping that transition from episode 2 to episode 3. I think Anakin's character gets a lot more attention and love, and Maul is like cool, he's scary, he's interesting, kind of, but his motivations are just Obi-Wan, my legs. I don't think he's this super deep.
You just summed up Maul perfectly. That's his entire character. Obi-Wan, my legs.
I think it would be more interesting if he had his whole revenge thing geared towards the Jedi or towards the Republic or towards Sidious as well, instead of just the kid that happened to be there when he was tired out from fighting Qui-Gon.
Hey, I just can't get over that. Literally, that's always Maul's entire life. He's
like,
mad
you got are you
and
that
something happens to his legs? So yeah,
you can't take it that personally, right? Like anyone would have cut off your legs, Maul. Like you probably should have cut off a lot higher than that. If if you're gonna be like this for the rest of your life.
And it's funny though, as you watch that film, man, he got him right in the torso. I mean, he didn't get the legs. He got him like right in half clean, but
definitely above the legs. Yeah.
You would have seen that and thought, no, he's done. But whatever. I guess not only getting cut in half, whatever that anatomy of whatever his race is, matched with that fall, I guess that's not enough to knock him down. He'll get up again.
Not if you got hatred on your side.
Down. Yeah, that was another thing. I think that's just dumb. What kept you alive? Hatred. Oh, okay.
Your rage against the poor unfortunate person who's just doing his job. But I guess we'll get into this episode's quite a bit later. We do have a lot to discuss in the Mandalore plot, as you know, this trilogy of episodes does. It is the first time you see Satine and Death Watch, and there really aren't many. I don't think there's any Mandalorians in season 1 at all, right? Like Boba makes an appearance, right? But like,
yeah, is Boba a Mandalorian though? Because per this episode, Jango Fett was nothing more than a mere mercenary, and how he got that armor is beyond us.
Right, and even Boba Fett himself says that he doesn't really care about Mandalore or anything like that. So there's a lot of different ways to be a Mandalorian, and that's what this show starts to establish here in these episodes. Like later in the first season of The Mandalorian, like before you even ever meet Bo-Katan, it's all about, Mandalorians are just these bounty hunters that don't take off their helmets. That's pretty much all you get. But there's already a lot of depth established here, and a lot more like factions, a lot of political controversy. I don't know. There's a lot of just straight up civilians too. You got to kind of imagine what they're going through and what they think, in terms of being pulled into this clone war that they obviously want no part of.
Yeah.
Man, it's a little bit sketchy. Yeah, the Republic is kind of they've done this a lot. We're like, the Separatists are the bad guys, so we're gonna come here and save you, and then they end up occupying it for way longer. It's iffy.
Oh man, I mean, all of this is like, there's a lot of depth to this, and like you said earlier, it's like dark. Like when that guy, he just like decides, I don't know what he decided to pull, but he realized he can't get away, and he just gets on the balcony and like, what is he saying? He's possessed. His eyes are rolling back, and they're all gone white. His pupils are gone, and next thing you know, he like drops backwards. You're just like, oh, that man just killed himself. Mm-hmm. This is a what demographic is watching this show? This is wild. Like, so anyways, yeah, like he took his own life, and like you said, prisoners like killing themselves. I'm like, this is a dark series. And then like what it's overall, the entire arc, what it's about is just the occupation of the Republic in Mandalore. I'm like, how many like kids like did this storyline just go woo right over their heads this whole time?
Definitely me. I just thought, oh, cool, lasers. And I like the Darksaber a lot. I love yellow lasers that the Death Watch has.
What do you think of how like Pre-Vizsla was like super formal in his like approach to Obi-Wan to fighting? He was like, "Take thy weapon if thine dare. I shan't fight without thy Darksaber."
It's funny, they're already trying to be Game of Thrones here. Like that's kind of the whole Mandalore thing, is like it's its own Game of Thrones planet. And I think the way they're kind of over the top and very ceremonial, they're all about honor. I think that is really cool and in line with what I heard about, the old Jango and Boba. Like, yeah, Boba's a violent ass dude, but he's got a code still. Yeah, his line may be drawn a little further over here, but
yeah.
No, I think they're
not a little boy any longer.
He's a little over the top, but he's I don't know. I like Previs. I think his hair is really stupid. That is one thing I observed in this watch through. Like, what is going on with his? He's just got this one little like tuft of hair, just like it's so awkward looking. He looks like a 3-year-old that just got out of the bath. He's like
Alfalfa. Yeah, it's hard to take him seriously as a character.
But it is Jon Favreau's first canon appearance in Star Wars. This was how all of that started. I don't.
That's wild. Was he just acting? Like, why would he have lended his voice to this? I don't understand. Just because he loves Star Wars?
He does love Star Wars. I don't know if he has a writing credit on it too. I wouldn't be shocked because it seems like he is much more involved in, the Mandalore arc than just having a cameo. Previously is like the Mandalorian in this show, right? Is it fair to say that he's like the biggest, the top Mandalorian, the only one that they really
at this point in time
they really give too much of a face to?
Think about it, without him, we don't have Din Djarin and all the other folks. Like he's the guy keeping it alive.
Yep, and his direct descendant, his lineage is still going by season 3. So I don't know if I was expecting them to take.
His son died. His grandson's alive though, but his big boy died at the end of season 3.
Right. So he wait, no, now I'm confused. His son died at the end. I thought he just mentioned his son dying. Which one was his son?
The one in Mandalorian season 3. The one that...
Yeah, Paz Vizsla. I got confused. I thought you were already talking about Paz Vizsla. Yes. Okay. No, I thought you were talking about it.
And Paz Vizsla's son almost died because he got abducted by a pterodactyl thing, and they decided to go camping that night. And while his son could have been being eaten alive, different season, different show. Still not over that. Like, it's late. We'll get him tomorrow.
Yeah. You gotta take care of number 1 first, and then you put on your own oxygen mask before you save your child. That's what they say on airplanes, right?
Yeah, but to go camping while your kid is suffocating, like, hold on, I gotta go to sleep. You wait your turn for 8 hours, and then we'll give you the oxygen mask.
They're not used to fighting monsters, apparently. There's a lot of monsters in Mandalorian season 3. I actually just rewatched it, and there's just like monsters shoved into like every single episode almost, and like very weird, like just comes out of nowhere. This like the gigantic one at like the beginning of the first episode. You remember that? Just comes out of the water while they're doing the ceremony for I guess Pre Vizsla's great grandson. I don't know how many generations there are in between, but.
Wouldn't it be crazy if they were doing like a crossover with Legendary's Monsterverse and Godzilla was getting teed up? Like, just because, they've got the giant water Mandalore creature. What's it called? The Mythosaur. Mythosaur versus Godzilla. That's what we're setting up here. Could you imagine if that's what the Mando movie actually was? How many people would lose their minds? Like,
if there was an actual crossover?
Yeah, and like that's what the Mando movie is: Mythosaur versus Godzilla.
Mythosaur versus Godzilla.
Would you watch that?
No, I would watch if a fan. I have no interest in. I'm sure most Star Wars fans feel this way in Star Wars crossing over to any other franchise ever. They
All right,
already
so
do Godzilla. They have their own Godzilla. They don't need an actual crossover
Star
for it.
Wars has no, not that thing. That thing would get wrecked by actual Godzilla. So here's my thing. I think Star Wars should end in the Planet of the Apes fashion. I think there should be some ultimate end of the galaxy, right? And something happens, or like these people, maybe the galaxy doesn't have to end, but let's just say there's a group of people, refugees or something. They leave the galaxy. Maybe they're trying to find somebody, something, whatever, and it's just a group of humans, and they come out of hyperspace and they land in our solar system, and only habitable planet that could be habitated is ours, our little blue ball, Earth, and that ends, and that indicates that's how humanity started, on one ship that landed over here.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
That would be no. No. We
I
don't
would
need
love-
an explanation for Star Wars existing. No.
I would love that. No.
No.
So there's a fan film by the guy by name of a guy named Jamie Costa. He does a mean Robin Williams impression. Anyway, he does like this. He's like trying to find these ancient artifacts, and he finds all of these ones that basically are Star Wars, and he's in these caves, and at the very end you find out, no, like it's a Star Destroyer on Earth, and basically that's it. So somehow Star Destroyer got here, and that's how our origins are. Like that's how we have these stories. And as the guy takes the Star Destroyer off Earth, you find out he's basically Indiana Jones, and these Nazis are pursuing him. And he hands this like book to his wife, and he's all basically like, "Tell George everything we learned." And you realize she's pregnant, and then like she runs off, and he takes a Star Destroyer into space, so like people can't get it to, I don't know, Nazis go to space with it or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, it was such a good fan film. I'm like, this is awesome. I love this story. Why do you hate things, Brian? This sounds amazing.
Oh, you know me, just a chronic hater, just always putting down other people. I think it's a cute idea. It's fun to kind of imagine. Oh, Star Wars could be real. I don't know. I think Star Wars has always been distinctly fantasy and not science fiction. I think that separating it from our universe is what allows it to kind of create its own ethos, its own law of physics, all these other things. I think we need more stories that are told just with absolute disregard of logic and reality, you know? And I think connecting it to Star Wars, giving it, it gives it a limit, even if that limit is billions of years after the saga takes place or whatever. Like, it's still just like kind of lame, you know?
Okay. So the fan film is called Star Wars Origins. It has 2.2 million views, and it's like 21 minutes long. So I'm putting it in the comments here so everyone goes and sees it. One of the best Star Wars fan films ever made. Look at that right there. Yeah. Let me tell everyone, go check that out. Brian, you won't regret it. Even though I gave you the ending.
Okay, no, I don't mind spoilers. Honestly, it makes it more enjoyable. Spoil away. Just kidding. Don't spoil things when it's something I really care about, please.
Yeah, but dude, yeah, the effects on this, it's a beautiful fan film, and if you don't tear up a little bit, you're a monster who doesn't actually love Star Wars.
Oh, not a true fan.
You can't appreciate. Okay, so here's another one of my takes. I said like last week, I think that like I'm just gonna start watching more fan films and more like low budget indie movies, right? I've seen a couple of fan films this last week. I am of the belief in the next 5 years there will be more fan films that are made by these indie studios then there are like that will be better quality than that of Disney's and Lucasfilm.
Yeah, I don't think they're ever going to make another Star Wars movie at this rate.
I heard they all got like pushed back.
I don't know.
Like the Rey film is delayed or something.
There's a lot of like clickbait out there. There's a lot of Redditors that claim their uncle's, high school friend works at Lucasfilm and they've got an insider source, insider scoop. Oh, Kathleen Kennedy's going to be fired. It kind of sounds like one of those things. It's like, I don't know. I'm just going to try to ignore anything until there's like footage of it that they actually release.
All I will say is this: Disney is really, they got to stop releasing footage and announcing things because stuff never actually, so much on their end doesn't actually happen, and that's why they don't put out dates. I'm like, something's going on with Lucasfilm, like 2 Mando movies, more Mando seasons, the Rey movie, the Donald Glover movie that just doesn't ever happen. I don't know. I mean, look, I really liked when there was just like 3 prequels. There was a release date, you knew the year, and everyone was hyped. Now there's a lot of content, and no one knows what's going on, and everything's delayed. It's like, let's just, I don't know. Let's cut it back. The prequels, you did it right. That was the best trilogy you've done. So let's just
let's take a moment here and just let's leave some room for disagreement. I mean, I definitely don't agree that it's a better trilogy than the original trilogy. I don't want everyone assuming that I agree with that take, but I mean, and it's no,
but like why as the originals have Return of the Jedi, and Phantom Menace is a better film than Return of the Jedi.
No, it's not, for one, but also it doesn't. At Return of the Jedi, like, it's kind of weak on its own as like a standalone film. It's kind of disconnected. It's got this big boring part in the middle.
20 minutes are good.
The last scene is incredible, and everything else sets up for it in a beautiful way. If you watch all 3 of the original trilogy back to back, Return of the Jedi works a lot better because, there's not really much wasted time. All of that stuff at the beginning is directly tied into things that you saw on Tatooine in the original, and I think it works better as a trilogy than the prequels do. The prequels drastically just like are all over the place. You could completely remove Phantom Menace and the story would be, you'd be able to pick up exactly where episode 2 starts without that movie ever even happening.
But Duel of the Fates,
it's a good song. It
has the second best action sequence fight scene in Star Wars.
Sure, but is it essential? Is it really unskippable? No, it's definitely like the least consequential of all of them. And then episode 2 is just like, no one likes. I'm that film's biggest advocate, but like, you can't say it's the prequels are the best
better
trilogy and then say that they
Jedi.
both that 2 of those movies suck. I don't know.
Phantom Menace does not suck.
It's not great. I watched it the other day actually, and I love that movie. It is fun. It is an adventure. It takes itself so seriously, and I think it commits so many bad like prequel sins in terms of like you have to shove every character in there. Seriously, Darth Vader built 3PO? That is like the dumbest thing I think they ever introduced into Star Wars canon.
Why?
It's so unnecessary. Like, they never interact in the original trilogy, but then you have to force everyone to be connected. It makes the galaxy feel smaller when everyone knows each other, when everything is, in the same little bubble of main characters. This is the only little core cast that affects anything in the galaxy.
I think it's pretty cool.
It's cool. There's a lot of cool stuff in it, but that's because you and I grew up with the toys and playing the video games and building the Legos.
Watto, come on.
I mean, I love these movies. Don't get me wrong. I will defend the prequels vehemently, but like, to say they're a better trilogy than the originals, it's just not even. I don't even know how to be.
The first 2 movies are the best. Like, that's just how it is,
That's
but
how
like,
every trilogy is. That's how a trilogy should be structured.
I mean, I don't know, but The prequels were the opposite. It just kind of got better with as they progressed. Episode 3, it bums me out that we don't have it rated as the best Star Wars movie of all time. When I think of Star Wars, I think of Star Wars Episode 3.
Really?
Yeah. What do you think of when you think of Star Wars?
Usually
film?
Episode 5. Yeah.
Really?
Mostly original trilogy. I will say, yeah, like 90%. And I'm not sure I stand by this take before, but I used to say that if they had never made another movie after Episode 6, that's when Star Wars would have been like the best. Is if they had just focused on comics and animated shows and video games and just done all the fun stuff attached surrounding the original trilogy. They can fill in the Clone Wars, they can do all that stuff on the side, but like I think the prequels, I think Star Wars would have been better off without any other movies ever made.
But
after
Episode 7 is the best Star Wars movie of all time.
I forgot that you think that. Yeah, I.
No, listen, it's not the best, but it's my favorite for sure.
Yeah. I think I would be okay if there was one trilogy, like, and this is me as a sequel defender. If there's one trilogy that is the least consequential that I would just remake, it would definitely be. Actually, I don't know. I feel like there's more I would change about the prequels than I would change about the sequels.
I've never directed a Hollywood film.
Oh, you haven't?
So
you should try it.
Take this with a grain of salt. But I feel confident that I could have directed those 3 films better than not any one of those directors on their own, because they're like, well, I guess there's only 2, because they are like professional Hollywood directors, but better than it being disjointed amongst 2 directors. I think I could figure it out. Probably not the first movie. That would have been a pretty bad film. That'd been my first go. Second one though, be back up and I'd be like, all right, I think I get this a little bit more. Let's take it this direction.
Yeah, you say disjointed. I agree that like on the surface level, a lot of the decisions are kind of an overreaction. I think that's where a lot of the issues of the sequel trilogy happens. Is like, yeah, they didn't have this super set in stone plan for this. This is where we start. This is where we're going to finish. They left it ambiguous enough that by the time they get around to Episode 9, they could kind of tie in these plot lines together. And I think they do a pretty good job at hinting towards Snoke being something related to Palpatine. I love The Force Awakens and how it leaves enough ambiguity for some explanation. But I think like in terms of the tone and how the films are made and how their approach, I think the sequels are a far more cohesive unit than the prequels are. And definitely more cohesive. Like the original trilogy, come on. Like Leia being Luke's sister is just like absolutely shoehorned in to try and top the Vader reveal, and it quite directly like compromises how you view the other films. And I think the prequels do so much to like screw with your understanding of the Force and with the characters that like I think they committed, the prequels committed far worse sins than the sequels did in terms of just changing what Star Wars means and what it originally was.
But it wasn't that was if it's coming from George Lucas, right? Isn't it all up to his interpretation of what the Force is? Like that's actually what it is, whatever he says it is?
Well, that's I guess like as the owner of the company, like yes, that's how canon works. But like I think it's a little reductive to just like I don't know, I think people that are George Lucas like unilaterally stan him and his creative vision is that like these movies were made by far more than just one person. Like yeah, it was George's story, his characters, his writing, but like the original trilogy, it takes dozens and dozens and dozens, thousands of man hours to make a movie, and to just praise George Lucas for all of it, I just don't think it's the most accurate lens to look at.
I heard he wasn't supposed to direct the third one. I heard it was supposed to be Steven Spielberg.
That was going to do Revenge of the Sith?
No. Sorry, not that. No. The Return of the Jedi.
That was going to be Spielberg?
Mm-hmm.
I would have loved to see that. I know that these things change a lot. And Richard Marquand was like kind of a safe pick, or from what I understand, it was kind of like a late pick, but it was definitely a more like Hollywood kind of approach to directing than episode 5 was. Episode 5 is like an art film, and I think like the tone shift from 4 to 5 and from 5 to 6 is just kind of all over the place. Even if there's a story there, like I think people praise it a little too much, or they dog on the sequels too much for changing during production, where the original trilogy also had a lot of major changes throughout its development that you're not really acknowledging, right? You got to be fair to all of them if you're going to hate on the sequel.
So can we say Star Wars is maybe just a little bit overrated? Like we all love it, and that's fine. I'm glad we love it. But is it a little bit overrated? Because like, has it ever been that great?
No, Star Wars sucks. Like,
Whoa.
Should we just get into the hot takes? That'll be my hot take for today.
Wow, I didn't say that. We all love it here. Let's not get murdered by fans here. I enjoy Star Wars, but is it overrated?
Yeah. Well, I think it's pretty accurately rated. I think it's a little there's a difference between overhated and underappreciated. I think those are two different but like kind of parallel problems or parallel accusations. I think some Star Wars movies are overhated, some of them are overrated, some of them are underappreciated.
You should be a president. You're just like, well, I mean, you went from like it sucks to like a very politically correct answer. So I don't know what I'm getting with you this next like statement.
Yeah, none of it has ever been truly very cohesive or well planned out. And the forefront of most of the business decisions of Lucasfilm seems to be throughout most of its history pre-Disney was to sell merch. Like a lot of like that was one of the big things about prequels is like they obviously don't care much about the story. They're just trying to sell toys and video games. And for the generation that grew up with those, exactly. Yeah. So like that's.
And I was happy with the movies. I didn't care.
No, I didn't really. Wasn't gonna analyze them to the extent that I do now. But it's clear that a lot of these memories, a lot of the passion that fans have towards them is largely nostalgia for what they grew up with when it was literally marketed towards them. So,
yeah. So like, that's why, should we really even get mad when Star Wars is subpar now?
I think it's okay to be.
Andor was the first time I feel like it really took itself seriously since episode 5.
Well, no, I mean, just watching The Phantom Menace, like the music and the pacing and the acting of that movie, like it takes itself very seriously. They're saying Star Wars is mythology. This is a parable. Episode 1 is straight up like out of the Bible. Like it is a parable of a movie, and it's a little less, fun and adventure.
How can you say it's terrible?
Jedi. Because it's poorly made and executed. It's not well acted. There's no interesting characters. Except like Qui-Gon's cool, but doesn't really have like conflict or development.
Yeah, it's a boring. I hear you. It's a boring film. I withdraw everything I said before. So like, let's think about this though. Would Peter Jackson have done a better prequel trilogy than George Lucas?
Let's see if he had like approached it with the same.
Peter Jackson is
at the same time.
Like he wants to do Lord of the Rings. They say no, but he gets passed off to Lucasfilm, and George is like, "Yeah, well, you can like, I guess you can, you can do this film if you want. Like, just try the first one. I guess you can keep going. I guess,
Yeah, I don't know because I'm not as familiar with Peter Jackson's like other stuff. I saw his Beatles documentary, which was awesome. But other than that, I don't really know how.
Have you not seen King Kong?
Actually, I think I might have seen that one, but I don't know. Are you a fan of that? Or is that, as far as I remember people talking about it, I don't think it went over well.
Wait, hold on. I thought it was like highly rated.
Peter Jackson's King Kong? Or am I thinking of that Planet of the Apes movie that came out around then?
Yeah, the King Kong one, the Peter Jackson got 84% Rotten Tomatoes, 7.2 IMDb. It did well.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure.
It was a long movie. It was like 3 hours, like all Peter Jackson films.
Okay.
Yeah. No, let's see. What other films did Peter Jackson do? I mean, he's done a lot of indie movies we haven't heard of. I forget that Andy Serkis was in that.
in King
I feel-
Kong.
Yeah, he's done a lot of movies we haven't heard of.
Yeah. So that's why it's kind of hard for me to say, like, I love Lord of the Rings, but it's a very different kind of story than like the prequels. Like I know George had his outline, so maybe Peter Jackson could have, gone back to those old treatments and used that source material in like a similar approach to Lord of the Rings. Just like, hey, here's, the broad strokes, the set pieces, from A to B where the where the story needs to go, and I'm just gonna spend 12 hours living in that world. I don't know, because a lot of the brilliant things about the prequels are very like design oriented. But I think Peter Jackson does understand trilogies and storytelling better than George Lucas does.
Well, obviously, so Peter Jackson has not directed that many films when I look at it. And overall, besides the Hobbit trilogy, which, if anyone knows anything about that, he was cut a lot of production time and, wasn't given, I mean, don't get me wrong, they're not great movies. But I think with enough pre-production time, it would have been far, far better than what we got. I don't know. I really do believe the best Star Wars trilogy that could have ever been done would have been done by Peter Jackson.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I would love to see it. A lot of my cousins were saying a Christopher Nolan trilogy would have been, or movie in Star Wars would be interesting. And I'm not sure if I don't really know that much about filmmaking, or if these are just directors. These are more pop culture kind of people where clearly, like, to make a good Star Wars movie, you don't need a director that's done, all these incredible, massive, giant Hollywood movies. If you get someone like Irvin Kershner has never done anything like Star Wars, and he just told the best romance and drama and filled it with wonder and whimsy and all kinds of great things that Episode 5 has. I don't think you need like a Hollywood kind of director. In fact, that's probably one of the things that took away from the prequels, was their emphasis on spectacle over character growth or relationships. And I don't know if I've seen enough of Peter Jackson, because there aren't really very many people. There's not a lot of variety, not a lot of diversity in his, not nearly as much as there is in like Star Wars, where you get Wookiees and droids and sometimes a female character with speaking lines in Star Wars. So I'm not sure how well Peter Jackson would have done with that. But I think it would have been interesting to see.
Yeah. Well, this episode was interesting to see. For the listeners who like hearing it and they want to hear more Duel of the Ring stuff, where can they go?
We can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And is there something else?
We have a website.
What?
We have a website.
A website, dueloftheranks.com. You should check out that. You can submit your own hot takes in there, and we'll discuss them in the episode. And you can check out all of our socials and follow us, like and subscribe, share the video, give us your hot takes and everything.
Everything. That is this week's episode of Duel of the Ranks. Go do the things Brian said. You won't regret it. Maybe you will, but not for long. Anyway, that's this week's episode. We'll see you next week for another episode of Duel of the Ranks. See you then. Bye.